this week on Unlimited, we're at Tulsa Raceway Park for the Work Truck Review 8-lug Super Diesel Shootout, sponsored by Shell Rotella Oil. For a long time, everyone just thought of diesel trucks as a work vehicle or something that you took and maybe pulled a sled with every once in a while. But 10 to 15 years ago, something crazy happened. Manufacturers started selling so many of these trucks that a whole aftermarket sprung up around them. And now it's not uncommon for a guy to take his stock pickup truck and with bolt-ons like fuel injectors and turbos and upgraded fuel pumps, be able to make crazy horsepower. Diesel engines are great in the fact that you start out with basically a bomb-proof bottom end in these things. The crankshafts are all forged steel, they got forged connecting rods. They're built really strong to start with right out of the factory. So they respond to bolt-ons and upgrades unlike any other gas motor you've met. This is a great event as it takes and really showcases the diversity of diesel trucks. These guys make crazy horsepower and they display it on the dyno, they got a sled pull, and they also got a drag race. All three of those events are going to be combined and we're going to score them as part of a deal we call the Shop Truck Challenge. We got guys from all over the country here that are ringing their diesel trucks out at all three of those events to prove who has got the baddest diesel truck in the land. When diesel truck enthusiasts talk about making big torque, it puts big block Chevy engines to shame. There was a guy yesterday in the dyno that made 2,500 foot-pounds out of an engine that has a stock block. Everything else is new, but the base of that motor is a stock piece of iron that he churned out 2,500 foot-pounds of torque at the tires with.
When you see him throwing 1,800 horsepower to the dyno, it's great to see that. I'm glad to see him at this event. The truck is just a blast to watch. It jumps straight up, jumps to the left, jumps to the right, and how he gets it down the racetrack, I do not really know.
Speaking of that very machine, the truck and all 2,500 foot-pounds of torque that it makes headed over to the drag strip. Piloted by Dimitri Millard, this Chevrolet is a four-wheel drive stomper. It ran the quickest and fastest lap of the weekend at Tulsa, which was 9:95 at 145 miles an hour. It's great when you come to an event like this where you have both tow rigs and normal pickup trucks running on the racetrack, as well as wildly modified pickups like Overkill. Anybody who thinks these trucks aren't hot rods is really out of their mind. These guys are starting with stock trucks that make a couple hundred horsepower. In some cases, the modern trucks make 300 plus, but they're making 600-700 horsepower with bolt-on parts. It's the same as somebody taking a small block Chevy, going to their garage and bolting headers and a cam and all the deal into it. These guys are doing essentially the same stuff. So hot rodding the diesel world is totally the same as hot rodding on the gas side of things. Granted, their vehicles are 3 times as heavy as most of the stuff you'd find on a drag strip normally, but it runs just as hard. One of the most interesting vehicles on the grounds at Tulsa was the dragster of Greg Hogue. For many years, Hogue raced with NHRA as an index sportsman racer in their gas classes. He then fell in love with diesel engines and began headlong into diesel performance.
I started out with Cummins, and since then I've gone over. I've always been a Chevy guy. Run Chevy V6s, ran Chevy inline 6s, ran Chevy small blocks, and the Duramax engines really intrigued me. It's a V8. I've kind of built it, I've kind of worked with the motor just like we would with a competition eliminator motor. It's got aluminum rods, and we've taken 57 pounds of rotating weight out of the bottom end of this motor. It has a reactor aluminum flywheel and a fluid dampener aluminum harmonic balancer. And my motor builder is a guy named Dave Mosier, who I grew up with the Comp Eliminator team, and he built the motor for me, and it's built like a Comp Eliminator. Chris Franks at Frankenstein Racing Heads did the cylinder heads, and then Greg Young at ZZ Custom Fab, he did the intake manifold and headers and most of the fab work on it. We use a Top Fuel style wrist pin, we're called the Coletta pin. We use the Shell Rotella and the Shell synthetic diesel oils. Feel it works with the bearings really well. The car is a Charlie Stewart racecraft dragster. It was built for a combination of running diesel engine and running B-Dragster automatic with a Pro Stock motor. Just going to have a good time with this car.
Hogue plans to use the dragster to develop NHRA sportsman talent into seasoned veterans ready for the professional ranks. Probably the most interesting, grueling, and downright tough event of the weekend was the truck pull. The sled was punishing every truck that pulled in front of it and leaving a trail of broken ones in its wake. As the sun set on the horizon, the final battle of the shop trucks was in full swing. Some trucks were able to drag the sled over 300 feet. Others didn't even make it a full 6 before they broke. Well, what a wild day and night we've had here in Tulsa. The first ever Super Diesel Shootouts finally come to an end. And it's Dylan Carter, the 16-year-old kid in a Cummins. And if you don't speak diesel, that's a Cummins-powered Ford, is your winner in the first ever shop truck shootout. He did very well in the drag race on the dyno, and then he did a fantastic job on the sled pull to take the overall win. Been a great first event here. Rotella Oil was fantastic to be the sponsor of this deal. Looks like it's going to be a great event for years to come. And we're signing off from Tulsa.